Well, what's up, Internet, and welcome to the second installment of this Niagara Program tutorial series. In this part, we're going to dive a little deeper into the Niagara Program Object, as well as introduce some external packages that we'll be using, and I'll show you how to import those, and then I'll demonstrate how I troubleshoot some code issues, and then I'll throw together a pretty useful program that I've used pretty heavily in the past. So here we go. All right, so let's say your sales team lands a huge project. It's a 100-story high rise, and it's going to have a Jace each floor. It's just a huge project, and the building's not even finished yet, but you've got to get started on a database. All right, the owner hands you a CSV file that's got names and IP addresses and stuff like that you're going to have to apply to all these devices. So you don't have time to go out on site and get all this stuff up and running. You got to build it off site and offline. So what if you were able to take your CSV file and just import it into Niagara, and it automatically creates a station object for everything? So that's totally doable. That's what we're about to do. All right, so the first thing is you'd bring your CSV file or whatever into the environment. So I've got a file through together here. It's just got 10 examples of the IP address versus name, and it's got a header up here. All right, so that's what we're going to use. All right, so to be able to read it, we got to find this file. So the way we do that is you resolve it with its ORD. So everything is resolved. The locations are all resolved in Niagara through its BORD. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our help file. We're going to do a search for ORD or BORD. And we'll scroll down to it and find the Baja doc for it and see what we can do with this guy. All right, here we go. All right, so first things first is we got to declare this, because this object does not reside in any of these packages that are already predefined. So we can do that two different methods here. So we see that it's in the module Baja, and the package is javax baja.naming. So we go back here. We can import the package by first selecting the module and then just pasting the package in there that we stole from the help menu or the help documentation. You can do it that way, or you can just simply grab it by the one specific type. So you can do BORD right there. Both of those have the same result. I'm more of a fan because I'm always in here, so I typically just copy and paste from here and do it that way. But either way is perfectly fine. All right, so to find this guy, we're going to have to create a variable here. So we'll do BORD is going to be the type. We'll just call it file ORD. And then we're going to make we're going to resolve it with a BORD. So BORD.make. All right, we go back to our documentation here. We've got BORD, we got a make method here. And you'll notice that there's tons of different methods here. This is called method overloading in Java. It means you got one method name, but you pass different variables to it. So that's why you can have more than one. In this case, we're just going to use string. So we'll go back here, and we're just going to copy this from the file space here and paste it in. So that is a reference to this file right here. And from then on, we could just call this file by file ORD. All right, so we got that. That should compile. It does, so we're good there. But another way we could do this is let's say if we wanted the user to be able to do this from the wire sheet or from the property sheet. So we can do that as well. So we come here, we create a slot. We just call it file ORD, and the type's going to be ORD. We'll select summary on it. So now we got it where somebody comes here, they can do the same thing. So let's say I want this CSV file here, save it. So now we should be able to do this. We should be able to print out that the ord for that file. So we'll do system out print line, and we're just going to call file ord, do get file ord, get file ord dot get ord. And if we go back into bord here, we'll see we have a method for getting the ord. So now save, compile it, and you got to get the parentheses in the right place here. There we go. All right, so now if I go back here and clear this, if I run this program, it should print out our ord for that file. So it's the same exact thing as what before, except before we were statically referencing that file versus now it's dynamic. All right, so we can actually just get rid of this. So now we've got a getter and setter for our bord. All right, so now we have an ord or a location for this file. That's not quite enough to do anything with it. We need to create a file instance and then resolve that to our location here. The way we do that is like this. Okay, what I did there is I create a BI file, and then I'm getting the ord from our slot here. So we're using the getter. We're using get file ord. And once I got the file ord, we're resolving it, which if we go into our bord class here, we have a resolve, which is convenience for resolve. So that's resolving that to a local instance here. And then get is just pretty much you're mounting the object. You're getting it. So that should compile. And there we go. All right, so we've got an instance of a file. We've got it resolved to an actual file in our file space here. So now we got to figure out a way to read it. So the way we do that is with an input stream reader. All right, so let's go do some research on this guy. So you see here we have an input stream reader. All right, so we're going to create a new instance of it. So we're going to have to use one of these constructors here. We'll just use this first one. So to create a new input stream reader, we're going to need to pass it an input stream. All right. So we're just going to call this reader. It equals to new, which to create a new instance of something, you got to use the new keyword. Input stream reader. All right, so it said we needed to pass it an input stream there, right? So we need to read this file, which is of type BI file. So we need to get an input stream from that guy. So let's take this here, put it in our help, go find him. And there should be an input stream or get input stream method here, which there is. So returns the input stream. So that's what we're going to use here. So we'll do file dot get input stream. And if I compile that, it's going to fail because I've not declared what an input stream reader is. As you can see here, the error's pointing. It's like, what in the world is this? So I cannot find symbol. All right, so let's go back here. Hit the back button a couple times, maybe. Yep, there it is. So input stream reader is located in the java.io package. So we go back to our imports here. There's Java, and we'll just type in java.io. Go here, compile and save. We're golden. So while this input stream reader is reading lines from our CSV file, we need to place to store them. So the best way to do that would be to store them in an array. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a string array because each one of these lines is just going to be text, which is just a string. Call it rows. And we're going to use a utility here called file util. All right, file util has a read lines method that we're going to use. So we'll do file util dot read lines, and then we're going to pass our file reader to it. So reader, and we'll compile that. This file util is actually located in the same package as this right here, so there's no need to import this one as it's already predefined in this program object. All right, so now we're reading from our file. We're taking each line, so each one of these rows is going to be fed into a string array, and then from then on we can, instead of dealing with the actual file itself, our information is stored in this string array. All right, so before we get too far into adding stations from our CSV file, we need to go ahead and declare a place that we're going to put them. So to do that, since they're Niagara stations, they're going to be under the Niagara network. So in this case, we're just going to create a new station folder, and we're going to have to resolve to that station folder. So the way we do that is, first off, we need to look and see what the type is. So we see our station folder slot here is from the Niagara driver module, and it's just a Niagara station folder. So if we go here, if we put a B on the front of that, Niagara station folder, we got it here, and we see that comes from the com.tritium.nd, which ND stands for Niagara driver. It comes from that package. So we'll go ahead and declare that in our imports. Go down to Niagara driver, and then we'll paste this in. Now we got our import for that. So we're going to create a new instance that we can resolve. So we'll do B Niagara station folder. We'll just call it Niagara folder, and then we're going to specify the type. And here's where we're going to use our bord make method again. So we'll do bord.make. All right, so we're going to copy our ord here. We'll put it in parentheses. So that's where we're going to add our new stations after we create them. And we have to also resolve it, just as we did before. All right, so that's, from now on, where we add our stations, we can refer to it by this variable name. All right, so the next part is where all the action's going to happen. If you're not familiar with a for statement or for loop in Java, I'm definitely not the best teacher. I highly recommend going online and getting finding some good documentation or some good tutorials. But they're pretty straightforward. I mean, I've used them for years, and not just Java. I mean, some of the older control programming that I've done, I've used for loops and while loops and all that good stuff. If you're not too familiar, I definitely recommend going and finding out about those. All right, so we're going to use an integer to drive our for loop. I want to put it outside of the for loop because I want to access this outside of the for loop. And I'm going to create a string. It's just going to be called name, and it's going to be empty at this time. All right, so our for loop, I'm going to do I equals 0, and I is less than rows dot length, and I plus plus. All right, so basically we're saying we're going to iterate through our string of rows, and we're going to get the length of the string, and our for loop's going to stop whenever our array runs out of indices. All right, so each time this runs, I'm going to create another string array. We'll just call it properties. We're going to use a class called the text util. Split and trim. So basically, as we're iterating through each one of these rows, we're going to create another string, and we're going to pretty much clean up the text that we're reading, because as we're reading this file, there may be white space, or who knows what the formatting might be. So we need to be able to take care of that ahead of time so we can work with the data a little bit easier later on. All right, so in the text util, let's see what we got available here. Go explain this guy a little bit. All right, so we got split and trim. So we parse a string into an array using a delimiter, so the comma in our CSV file, and then it'll trim the white spaces from each side. And we need to pass a string and the delimiter. All right, so we're going to pass rows, and our I, as we go through here, we're incrementing the I. So we're going to do rows to I, and then we're just going to pass an empty comma in here as our delimiter. And I forgot to put my parentheses here. All right, so there we go. All right, so next, we're going to create a string variable. We're going to call it row output. And it too is going to be equal to an empty string, because as we go through this and we pass out each one of these rows and clean it up and put it into another string array, we're going to get each row will be the row output. So it'll be a cleaned up version of what we pull out of that. And we're going to have to do another for loop to get that out. So int k equals 0, k less than properties dot length. We're going to increment k. All right, so here we're going to do, so if k is equal to 0, do this, else, do that, and we'll fill that out here in just a second. All right, so if k equals 0, row output, it's going to be equal to row output plus our properties. Else row output is going to be equal to row output plus comma then plus our properties. All right. It might look like a bunch of gibberish, but you'll see the end result here in just a second. And if it's confusing, like I said, I recommend going back and finding you a good tutorial series on for loops and nested for loops and stuff like that, and you'll be able to make a lot more sense out of this. All right, so we got that. So now we got to start figuring out our start and stop points for like the IP address or the name in our row. So we're going to create an integer. Let's call it start. Row output dot index of. So row output's a string. So if we go here and go find our string, string is a very, very useful class. It has tons of useful stuff we can do. So if we pass it an int, so we're doing row output index of. So what we're doing is we're trying to find where the comma is going to be in between our. We're trying to locate this guy right here. And this string, if this string gets fed to our program, we got to figure out what the separating these two sets of data. So to get the IP address, we got to find the first instance of a comma. So that's what we're trying to do. So we're trying to find an index of our comma, which is index of, I said int, but I meant string or character. All right, so the next one we're going to do, create an integer. We're going to call it end row output dot index of. Actually, we just need to get the end of our string here. So we need to find the end of one of these lines. And we can do that with length. So back in our string class here, we can get the length, which is how long the sequence of characters is. So that should be our output.length. Oh, there we go. All right. So that's basically saying start is going to be where the semicolon or where this comma is, and the end is going to be the very end of the sequence of characters. So there are instance of our CSV file here. So we're going to start here, we're going to end here. So that's going to capture our IP address. All right, so that bit of code is just to get the IP address. The next one's going to be for the name, which is very simple. So we'll just do, we've already got a string name declared up here that's empty. So what we're going to do is we're going to populate that name. We'll just do name equals row output dot substring. The substring is a really useful tool. Go back to our string class here. So substring basically can get you, you can pull out a specific word of a string. So basically a string is just an array of characters. So if you call the substring method and give it two indexes, so beginning and an end, that will return you the text in between there. So in our case, I want to get this IP address. So each one of these is an array a character in an array. So it starts with 0, so 0, 1, and then so on. So I want to get up to this point to that point. And that's what we're doing right here well, actually, I want to get from here to there. So that's what we're doing with the substring. So, and to get that, you pass it, like I said, you pass it to integers. So the beginning index, which will be 0, and then the end index. In this case, our CSV file here, I want to get from 0, which is here, to here. But what's the best way to do that? So I've got a comma right here that I can use. So what I want to do is I want to say get all the way up to the comma minus 1. So that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to pass in a 0 for our first integer. And then our second one is going to be row output, which is the whole string of characters in that whole row. And then we're going to do dot index of. We're going to pass our comma to it. And then I want to do just -1. So that's saying in that string get from 0 all the way up to the comma minus 1. So that's going to return our name. And actually, we can go ahead and start testing some of this stuff out. So let's try it. Let's try it out real quick. So we'll do system.out.print line, and we'll just call name. That compiles. So if we go here and we run our program, got close. So this is a good troubleshooting exercise here. So you see we're missing one character. So that means that we'll take that -1 off, clear it, run it again. We're good there. But we're getting the header as well, which we don't necessarily want the header. So we're going to call one here. Clear it, run it again. There we go. Now we just by changing that from a 0 to a 1, we're skipping the first row and printing everything else out. Now if we wanted to, we could go ahead and get our IP address as well. So let's print that out too. So we'll do name, do some concatenation here, and we'll say row output. Actually, we'll make a variable for this. We'll say address equals row output substring. We're going to use these two integers up here that we created. So we're going to pass that to it because the substring method is looking for two integers. So we'll do start, and then we'll do end. This is going to return probably an issue. So we didn't declare the string up here. So we'll string address equals an empty string. All right, there we go. So now if we print name plus address, that should give us the name. Well, actually, we need to put something to separate in here. So we'll just do a string dash space and do another plus. And let's run that and see what happens. All right, so I see a problem there. We're including that comma, so we're going to have to do a plus on our start here. So we need to add a +1 here. Clear it, run it again. There we go. Actually, I can clean this up too by putting a space in here, make it look a little nicer. Clear output, run. There we go. All right, so we're actually reading from our file now. All right, so let's get rid of this print statement because we don't really need it anymore right now. So next is we got to create our Niagara objects. All right, so just like creating an instance of our file, we have to resolve it first. So we got to resolve our location, but we also got to remember, so to create a file, you have to give it a BORD. You got to give it an ORD place first, a place to go, and you got to know its name to assign it that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new ORD. So we're going to do BORD, we'll call it station ORD. We'll make it equal to BORD.make. And then we're going to use our location here. All right, so we got our location, but we have to put the name on there. So we're going to do name. And that's going to give us our ORD to our new station location that we're going to create. All right. So now, to assign an address to a Niagara station, it's kind of weird. I've always thought it was just an IP address, just a number. But if you noticed here, when you look at, let's see, go in the station folder. We'll create a new object real quick, or new station. New Niagara station. We don't even need an IP address. All right, if we look at this slot sheet of this guy, the address is an ORD. It's actually an ORD. You would think it'd be some type of number format, but it's actually an ORD. So we're going to have to create an ORD to apply our address to. So we'll do BORD address. Actually, we got two addresses here. We'll call this an address string. And so BORD address is equal to BORD.make. And here's we got to do some string concatenation again. So IP addresses start like this. So they do IP. If you ever run any reports in Niagara and it comes back with an IP address that's not just the IP address, it's got the IP colon appended to it. That's what this whole BORD thing I'm trying to explain is. All right, so we're going to append that to the beginning of the string, and then we're going to do plus address string. So that's how we get our IP address. Run that, compile, we're good there. So it's basically going to take our address that we saw that we printed out here and apply the IP colon to that. All right. So next we're going to be actually adding the station objects themselves. So resort back to our Niagara folder up here. And the Niagara station folder. Let's do some research on this guy. So if you notice, here's the object, which extends the B device folder, which extends the B folder, which extends B component. So B component's probably one of the heaviest used objects in Niagara, it seems like. If you notice here, it's got an add method to it. So that's how you add something to it. So like when you create a link or a display name or anything, it uses this add method to add it to that slot or that property. So we're going to use that here. So we're going to call Niagara folder.add, and then we're going to pass it a name, and then we're going to create a new B Niagara station object. Let's spell it right. There we go. All right. So B Niagara Station is the actual object. So if we go back here to this folder, this Niagara Station folder I created, you'll see that it's from the Niagara driver, Niagara Station. So there's no need to import it there because we've already got the import done with our com.tritium.nd import. All right, so that's good. And then we got to resolve the station so we can add the IP address to it, because you have to create the object, add it, and then apply the IP address to it afterwards. So that's why there's a lot of this extra coding here. Really, you could just add it with just this line right here, but to add it and actually add an IP address to it, it resolves a little, or requires a little bit more coding ahead of time, because you got to figure out where stuff is going to be and what it's going to be called ahead of time. All right, so next we're going to do we're going to resolve the actual object after it's created. So we're going to do B Niagara Station. We'll just call it station equals to B Niagara Station. And we're going to use our station ord here. All right, so just like we've done in the past, that's going to resolve and get the component for this station that we're going to create. All right, so we're just going to call station dot set address. We're going to pass in our address to that guy, and then save it. And now that is pretty much all the code that required to read from a CSV file like we have here and to create stations with it. So let's see it in action. So if we go to our program, right click and execute. There we go. We got station objects. Let's see if it put the IP address in there. We'll save our code. Yep. And there we go. That's pretty much it. I use this a lot. Like I said, I've been handed a spreadsheet with 1,000 devices on it, and I didn't want to go through them individually and name or do whatever. So it was easy to work with a spreadsheet. And there's obviously other properties in here that you can adjust and play with, but just for this demonstration, I kept it simple. So if you've got any questions or comments, leave them down below, and we'll see you on the next one.